Sprinkle of the dust so we fight like this. Sending in the text, get a tight, I pissed. I ain't never give a fuck like this. If you felt something, would you want my kiss? I won't let you know about the life I live, but I ain't got a choice, I'm stuck like this. Y'all on the left if you got thick skin. I ain't never like boys, I like real. Bitch, I got
Wait, who's gonna be the one to say yeah.
Hey, we're rolling.
Yeah, you can. You're the guest. Okay, so that means it started. We're in.
We're in.
So no one else that's in this vicinity can speak. There are people. There's 40 people surrounding us right now. We have a whole audience, but they know not to talk.
Are they gonna clap?
No, we'll put in the laugh track and the clap track.
Cool. Or I'll provide it. I'll clap for myself. I've been doing it my whole life. I can keep it up.
Okay, so this is Montavio Avery, the Return of the King.
What's up?
You can clap yourself in. All right, we're finally here. This is the first recorded episode.
Yeah,
like on video.
Yeah,
and 10th or 11th episode of the actual podcast.
Wow, you're
so congrats. You were first and 10th.
Wow. Ooh.
What an honor.
You're churning them out, man.
Honestly, a bit slower than I anticipated. But
you wanted to have more by now?
Because I haven't actually done one a week. I've done more like one whenever I can. And some week, there was one week where I had two. The review with the Joker review, and
the movie reviews.
Yeah, and the Us review with Louis. We got in like 3 days.
Do you see yourself going in a movie review direction?
Definitely a part of it. That's what he and I were talking about.
Yeah.
He was sitting right there last night talking about how that would be interesting to make like him the film person, the film review person, and have like different, like you could possibly be the psych person, but I don't want to compartmentalize everybody either, because I'd rather just talk about whatever. If you guys are going to be regulars on the show, then I want to talk about what's interesting to you too, and I know there's more things that matter to you than psych.
Well, I think
more than film to him, but
interdisciplinary conversations are what will maintain variety. What I mean by that is simply just like, okay, so like he could be the film person, but film in and of itself is already interdisciplinary, because history is involved, social context is involved, and sometimes different sciences are involved in different premises of the movies as well.
Right.
And all of that goes into your perception of why it's a good movie. And
right,
so,
there's overlap.
It touches on all that. And same thing with psychology. So it's like, maybe he is the movie person, maybe I am the psychology person, but that doesn't stop you from asking me about God or politics or movies. Because
psychology and film.
Yeah, literally.
Film and psychology.
Exactly, because it could go anywhere.
It
all could kind of go anywhere, so that's what I like about it.
Totally. Yeah, I think that would be cool then, maybe to have him be that, because I've already kind of built a theme with him. This is just becoming an episode about Louis and both of your placement. I guess it's relevant to you too, though, because you're kind of in the same situation of like, what do I do with you?
Yeah. Well, but mine's wide open, right? And
exactly.
I feel like the whole idea is you start somewhere, but you end somewhere maybe a bit more, bit more open, a bit more unknown, but known at the same time. Is like that's the whole point of like having these type of conversations. I feel like, because we know like there's plenty of stuff we won't be able to answer, but we can sit and give perspectives, which keeps the conversation wide open.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
totally. You just put into words what the meaning of the title was in a more clear way than I think even I had when coming up with this. So,
well, thank you. That's what it's been for us, you know.
Yeah, totally.
It's been a cute little little thing to listen to. Look forward to hearing.
Oh, yeah, dude. How many episodes have you listened to? Not to lie to me either.
No. I've listened to probably maybe about 3, but I don't listen to them in full. So I'll just play and be like, okay, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
And
that's what a lot of people do with
podcasts
too. Yeah. If you would listen to that,
can I say I'm a narcissist? Yeah.
But no, that's fair. I think that I do that a lot with podcasts too, especially ones that are like 3 hours, and you have to be someone of substantial value or like be someone that's like a figure in the world to be able to, I think, capture a general population of people, or like a good audience, a big audience to listen to you for that long. And there's a lot of times where I won't even listen to them that long, or I'll listen to half of them and come back to them later. Or parts of them, but
so I think where I want to take this conversation, if you don't mind, because what this is making me think of is what do you suppose the importance of this type of discourse is for like just in general? Because thinking about the debate we watched, was that last night? With
with Peter
Atkins and then the other guy, the Bible guy,
the Bible guy, yes,
the
astrophysicist Bible guy.
Yeah,
that's what he was, right? An astrophysicist.
Exactly. Yeah, he was an astrophysicist who had found his belief in God
because he apparently had never met a Christian in his life. I don't know what fucking rock this dude was living in.
I know. I don't know.
How
he says he's Canadian, so
it's only the biggest religion in the world, though. Like, how do you? There's got to.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
He's Canadian, so
what demographic of people are Christian in Canada? Do you know what the percentage
That's
is?
the thing, man. I don't know, but France has a really big historical influence on Canada.
Well, I know a lot of Europe too. It's becoming America's one of the most Christian countries to be that are that developed. So it's becoming more common not to be Christian in more developed countries.
Oh, really?
As far as I know, I mean, I don't have a source specifically that I'm pulling that from, but I know that I've seen some sort of report on the percentages. That's just natural too, being in a place where it's there's more religious freedom. In developed countries at this point.
People are going to start thinking for themselves.
And which will breed. I mean, there are obviously plenty of atheists or non-believers or Gentiles back in those times. You just couldn't. You had to pretend that you weren't.
Exactly.
So now that you have the safe space to be able to talk about that, it's obviously going to become more prominent.
Which Peter Atkins talked about, and he talked about that in the debate because he was talking about how, the rebuttal of the what was he, an astrophysicist? Yeah. So the rebuttal of the religious astrophysicist was, a lot of the people who you base your scientific theories and laws off of were they themselves believers. Well, be that as it may, Peter Atkins kind of pointed out, first of all, and this kind of ties in, I know I'm name dropping a lot, but it's only because all of my experience with this type of information is just really fresh because I've been on a binge with this type of thing. And so Daniel Dennett, another guy, and he kind of talks about how you can't necessarily blame them for having religion be a part of their schema or of the evidence that they bring to the table, because at the time that was all they knew. You know what I mean? And Peter Atkins kind of talks about that too. So in a way, these type of debates or conversations or podcasts, whether they be informative or basically when two sides of a coin kind of come together to talk about where a middle ground could be or why there isn't a middle ground, I feel like that kind of pushes the envelope to allow more Galileos, more Newtons to be allowed to be Galileos and Newtons without having to be forced in the construct of a religion like they were back in the day, because religion was fact.
The option.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. But now we've got the option, and that's what back to what the whole subject of the conversation is, how important is something like this. I think it's representative of those options, and I feel like it's important for each person to take it upon themselves to want to delve at least in a facet that they've always been interested in, and then see comparative minds think about that and talk about that, because then that tells you that at least gives you an idea of where your mind can go. So it's not always the most original way to attack a situation because it's secondary information, but what it does is it kind of trains you to think for yourself, because you see it too clearly laid out, articulate, and explained argument.
Well, it's either going to reinforce your idea of how right you were, or you're going to learn that you were wrong and hopefully adopt the opposing view as the better idea. And that's what to put into words with why I think it's so important, like you were asking, is that if you don't do that, then there really is no way to say that an idea can even carry any weight as far as the validity of it in an ethical sense.
Exactly.
It's because you could have all the power in the world and not really be willing to talk about those ideas with other people.
Yeah.
And then it's the only truth that there is, even if it's based on falsehoods. It's it may be false that it's ethically sound and good for the general, or for humanity in general, but unless you have those conversations, and I think that's one of the most. A lot of podcasters are saying that, but it depends on what you're covering. I mean, some podcasts are just for fun, but ones that are supposed to be debate oriented, which this one hasn't really been so far, and I'm interested to go into that. It's to have the discourse, because we haven't really had that one yesterday. It was so funny because I couldn't imagine watching the Peter Atkins and astrophysicist debate, dude. It's even though I am very passionate about about my views and like learning more about them and correcting them where they've been flawed. I think I'm working towards a better idea of what a good moral compass is. I'm still always very, very conscious when or trying to be, and I'm never, obviously can't be perfect, but I'm not as outrightly...
Unless you're Joey Becker.
Yeah, unless you're Joey Becker, you're going to be a dick to people when you argue with them. But that's kind of, like, that dude he was unabashed.
He
like,
was.
Just, like, fuck you mentality, straight face, which I think that was, like, although...
You're lazy.
Yeah, dude.
You're intellectually lazy.
Yeah, dude. That was such a call-out, and the fact that the other dude... I don't want to delve too much into their conversation, because there's not a lot of context, but yeah, he called the dude who believed in God, and was a scientist, like, intellectually lazy. And to be fair, that guy's rebuttal was the same thing. He's like, well, you're intellectually lazy. And I was like,
okay.
It's kind of... You can't just use the same argument, but at the same time... It is kind of, I can understand the knee-jerk reaction to want to do that when someone's calling you intellectually lazy, even if, like, I do agree that it may be.
Yeah.
It's usually never a productive thing, because in my mind, that it was a fun conversation to see them talk through, but you're never going to change any minds or find common ground if that's the direction you're going to take.
Which begs the question: is that what you want? You know, and I think
when you can, I think that should be the goal. Because if your goal is to change people's mind, your goal should also be to above that to find. Yeah, exactly. If your goal is to have people's minds changed, it shouldn't just be about. A lot of people say you shouldn't talk to people to change your mind. I disagree with that. But you should, as long as you're open to having your mind changed, if they point out a flaw in it.
Exactly.
And you have to. That's why you have to follow this system of logic and within philosophy and like in language itself. Yeah. Because if you don't, both sides have to do that. Whoever's going to be, and the one that's most sound is going to be the one that maintains that. And I felt like they both kind of were forfeiting that in that conversation. Because there has to be, to do that, there has to be a level of respect at all times, even no matter how ignorant you think the other person's view may be.
Yeah, which honestly, and I think that's something.
There we go. That's just something I'll have to do. I keep messing with.
My face being on screen is of utmost importance.
Yeah, dude. I'll just sit here the whole time with my finger on the laptop now.
Continue.
People watching will understand what just happened, but his face. We have in the new setup in the studio. We have a monitor for those just listening to the podcast, not watching it.
We're upgrading.
We are
upgrading, guys.
Yes, which draws back to the idea of minds wide open being and having an open mind being a changed thing. That was something I want to touch on when you saying, which kind of we started to move in the actual direction of what we're going to mostly talk about, which is I think faith. And I know you're going to sprinkle another psychologist in there too and run his ideas by me and see what I think. But what you said earlier, I feel like we still haven't really delved into the actual conversation, which is fine. I think that's part of the open mind and the open form of podcast is like. It's better. I like picking a topic for people to come up or to come on here and like to be ready to discuss, but it's also best I think for conversations to just kind of let them naturally roam free and reel them in or change directions when it's advantageous for the conversation. Exactly. But at the same time, being open is the best course of action. But there's a lot of things changing already with the podcast. I still don't really know what it is in its entirety. I don't know if I ever will, because I mean that's
well, maybe you don't have to. That could like you were just about to say. And maybe it constantly evolving is in a way a part of the brand. You know what I mean? Because a lot of podcasts, because the whole idea of targeting a person or targeting a type of person is because you basically want to affirm that your content is going to reach somebody. So you think to yourself, now who is that somebody? But that is all from the intention or perspective to push it. But oftentimes the greatest things come to be the greatest things because maybe the initial incentive wasn't to push to the most people, but simply
very specific.
Exactly, simply specific to what the starter of the movement wanted to do. And so I don't know. I just kind of feel like so far you've had people on and you have interesting conversations. Sometimes that's enough. Like I feel like like in my life, my personal life, sometimes it's easy to feel like I want more intellectual stimulation, or I want to talk more about things that interest me. And so sometimes just talking about them or hearing other people's perspectives, who might not even be professional, still gives insight to the mankind's collective experience. So if I hear what you think and hear what 25 other people think, yes, those 25 other people could be just as non-qualified or qualified as me or you or Daniel Dennett or Peter Atkins, but at the end of the day, they're still living through two sets of eyes in a body just like you.
Yeah,
and so
they're still human.
Exactly. We're all still human and therefore limited in what we can offer, but also there's still so much we can offer each other.
Yeah. No matter how brilliant your mind is, that's important. I think to not make icons out of people necessarily just because they're great thinkers, but to at least address who is contributing the most time,
exactly,
the most
pushing the
efficiently
the communicative conversation forward.
Exactly. That's the quality of a leader, not necessarily someone that has to be deified by any means. But that does often, I think that becomes like an issue oftentimes, ironically, even with people that are trying to contribute to the conversation, that draws away from that, is they often get they get this superstardom about them.
They get put on a pedestal.
Exactly. That it makes
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, but I guarantee you talk to any of those dudes. Yes, they're gonna say they have all these credentials and they have these great contributions and minds that are pushing things forward.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would hope so. Otherwise, that's how you do. That's why it's so hard not to become a narcissist when you become a celebrity.
Yeah,
because people are telling you you're superior in a sense by saying you're the person we're gonna listen to. You're the person that it seems, or you're one of the people that has a following of that seems to be putting into words what everyone else is thinking. But that's
power,
not
the influence.
Yeah, and I think that it creates a degree of separation oftentimes. But that's why I really like people like Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku, is because even though they are that brilliant, you still clearly know that it's a place of confidence to keep speaking about it that really is making their careers and keep learning about it too, rather than them just being that much better than the common person.
Exactly.
So I think that can often be so
in what they know.
Yeah. And to a lot of people, that's too intimidating to ever do anything. They're like, well, I love listening to these people and caring about them and hearing their ideas, but they're on a different level. In a sense, they are. I mean, I'm not saying that I think life experience has a lot to do with it, but also time spent. I don't spend my time nearly as efficiently studying things, and they also they streamline. Like Sam's gone in the three directions of philosophy, spirituality, and neuroscience, and Michio Kaku's gone in theoretical physics, and that's I think by picking one of those, and they also they don't probably party a lot or have incredibly social lives with big groups, and that tends, because of what I'm going into with filmmaking, I think that's more of a necessity to do that. So it's impossible to be the same person. You shouldn't even strive to be this.
Exactly.
To be them, rather to be more like each other, or more like all of them, which in turn makes you more like yourself and just a better person, more well-rounded.
That's true, dude.
But
no, I agree, and I feel like, and Peter Atkins kind of touched on that a little bit. Hello, Peter, if you're ever listening. look at the influence already. This proves my point. I'm pushing the conversation forward. Yeah. But anyway, he talked about kind of how when you're young and when you become a scientist, you've got to streamline. You have to pick a cozy corner, and you really have to nestle in on that corner, and whether it be geology, astrophysics, biology, and yes, they all seem different, but interdisciplinary science is the answer to life, as meta as that sounds. It's just the way it is. And so being a scientist and appreciating science and studying science is more so about the fundamental appreciation for knowledge and seeking that, as opposed to what island you're on, so to speak, what group you're in, are you a geologist, are you you know what I'm saying? And so I guess my point is, the older you get, you can look at science as a whole, and you don't necessarily have to pick between what it is that you want to study or that you want to do.
Right.
And I think that's really important, to look at basically the whole reason why we're doing any of this anyway. Like, I feel like the whole reason why we're studying, the whole reason why we want to allocate our time in certain ways is because we just want to know the truth.
Yeah.
Everybody's just trying to figure out the truth.
Right.
And so it doesn't really matter where you find that. Whether it be astrophysics, whether it be like Michio Kaku, theoretical physics, they're all just trying to find truths in their field that correspond to the big truth. And that's why they're so influential, I feel like, is because not only are they pushing the conversation forward for their island of research, whether it be theoretical physics or astrophysics, but they have taken it a step further interdisciplinarily by being able to say, well, this is how it applies to you, the average person. And that's the part that gets people clicking, because they're like, well, wait a minute, we're supposed to trust science, and you're telling me that what you're learning is applying to me. This is really important. And that's what gives them traction, so it's all about, again, just pushing it forward, pushing truth forward. How can we do that? And that's why I love a podcast with debates, but more so informative podcasts in general, whether it be debates or simply talking about what somebody knows, because 20,000 perspectives are always better than one. And so when I see a debate, I can see debates are my favorite, though, because then you can see how opposing the two sides are, and you can see where you are in the middle, because if they're good debaters, they will bring their facts. And then it's just up to you to make the choice. So
Totally.
And open conversations would do the same thing. Like, we're neither of us are experts, but we have a perspective. And so what I think about something, what you think about something, is just as mind-molding or influential to a listener, especially when all they want is to think about it too.
I think that's the most important lesson I've ever got from listening to all the podcasts that I have over the last few years. And I think it's been about 3 years since I started listening to various podcasts. But it shows you, in a world that's becoming more and more, especially with how politically divided the nation is, but even just overall, I think because of a lot of things that have come to the surface, that a lot of injustices and systematic issues that have come up over the last couple decades to be more prominent with vocalized within the general the public. It's becoming all the more common to create echo chambers and to exist within a yes man group and not find out where you disagree. A lot of times people, I find it happening to me too, with just very casual situations of people that I don't see that often, that have to maybe see in classes and stuff.
Liberals. Let's talk about it.
What did you say?
Liberals.
Well, I don't even know if it's necessarily liberals, because it's both sides, but they're definitely the ones that get the bigger rap for it.
Because you feel like a warrior when you're a liberal.
And it's easier because, I tend to lean left right now of where the current circumstances of the world exist. But I think because it's becoming more clear that theirs are more civil, the ends are more civil in what they believe, the means are still pretty much just as corrupt and hard not to use the same, because a lot of times if you're gonna fight, if someone's fighting you with fire, it's hard not to fight back with fire, especially if you have very limited access to water and are gonna have to, it's going to take, I don't know what analogy I'm building here, but it's hard not to let it get crazy and to fight back when you feel like you're being that wronged, so I do understand that, but I think it comes back to education being the only antidote for ignorance. It can't be, and education can't be a shameful process. Otherwise no one's going to want to learn, they're not even going to, you have to earn their respect still, which is what's hard. Is you should just be able to earn that, a lot of these respects that inherently, but that's just not the case. And I think that's why it's so important. Is Joe Rogan's probably one of my favorite podcasters. I feel like that's who this is most modeled after. I think Sam Harris's I've probably learned a little more from, knowledge wise, but that's more. It's a little more formal and debate oriented, and he usually looks for people that he's going to have some sort of disagreement with. Exactly.
Whereas, Joe Rogan's just come talk.
Which I love that format, because it's both formal and informal, and it depends on the natural energy of the situation, the person that he's talking with. Sometimes he's going to have someone that they don't talk about really serious shit, or if they do talk about really serious shit, they're going to have a very agreeable conversation. But I think
it's bound to be a debate.
Exactly, which is that is the point as people in conversations we have to get to, and that's why I think it's so vital and great. Even if we are in a place where it's more stable, we have to keep that is one of the most important scientific processes, like social science, I would say, to building towards not making ourselves stagnant, of moving towards the greater truth and a better truth, or more ethical truth, I think, which is the capital T truth to me. But I think it is getting better, you know? I think it's going to be interesting. I'm a little nervous to have the first, like, conversation where I'm going to have a little bit of disagreement with, because it's probably going to be, it might be with a stranger, you know? I think we're going to definitely have some point where we do an episode and we disagree, but I already can sit down knowing each other so well that I have certainty of how far my emotions are going to go, and like how far yours are going to go. I can gauge that to where it doesn't make me anxious. But again, that's what you have to overcome, even that anxiety, is even if you, especially in those situations where they're strangers, because so often we don't talk to the people that aren't like us, that are trying to figure out how they're going to vote or how they're going to feel about a certain certain subject, you know. So,
and I feel like the astrophysicist handled himself really well in the debate.
Although I disagree with him way more. I think he handled himself way better than the other guy.
Because the other guy was making blatant attacks,
and which in turn made the other guy do it too. But even a lot of that body language is like, and that's the hardest one to really gauge, just because in that, again, I think comes down to confidence, and just a confidence that that accepting that the way you're displaying yourself and the energy you're giving off and the body language you're giving off is accurate to how you think you're displaying it. Like it's being received. You have to have that confidence. Otherwise, it's gonna be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You have to be physically articulate about what you mean and what your intentions were in saying something, where someone could take it wrong.
And I felt like that guy. If there was a picture of Peter Atkins, and not too much of a dig at him, but like if it was a picture of him and it just said, "This is an atheist," like he's kind of, that conversation makes me think that even though he's probably doing a lot moving forward of like a deeper truth and that's accurate, his demeanor is all the more important for people, whether they're even going to listen to him. Because he's preaching to the choir with a lot of people that are getting there or needing to learn a little bit more, but they've already kind of started to get that foot in the door. But
but he's not very advantageous.
He looks like a cynical old curmudgeon that
go ahead and say it, douchebag.
Well, I don't want to be provocative. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. To be different than in his regard. But I think that's one thing that makes it difficult for me to even. That is the reason why I don't identify as an atheist, even though I'm a non-believer, I would say, which I don't. That's even tricky because that starts to compartmentalize you and put you in a group. I like to say more so that I'm just Joey, and I have my beliefs and I have my spiritual experiences that I deeply believe in and feel very extremely profound, you know, they're just as arguably profound to me as a religious experience as to someone who's Christian, or what they call God, I can call the universe, and that's still equally profound to me. If we're going to be subjective about it, because that can oftentimes be the argument that's made in against that, is that, well, you just haven't experienced something like that. It's like, well, yes, I have, but I'm just not calling it the same thing.
They tell me something different.
Right, exactly, and which is fine. And I think we're getting to a place where a lot of people can agree to disagree on the direction, what they identify as a group. But that's why I don't identify as an atheist, is because there's so many religious atheists, ironically, you know, like they dogmatic, exactly. But it becomes religious when it's organized, right? And like
that's a fair point.
A lot of people have said like one of the big flaws of atheism is that there's not like an atheist church, and that because they haven't been able to unite and like compete with these other religions, that's something that helps Christianity, is to bind together. Is like they have the church, and any religion obviously has something of that nature. But it's so tricky because yes, that would help maybe organize things, but it's also it's hard to gauge whether it's going to do more good than harm.
Exactly, because
dogma is the biggest thing you're overcoming. It's not that we're trying to disprove that God exists. It's that you're trying to disprove that dogma is okay. And
the only way
you can do that you can do that without saying I believe there's not a God. I find it more advantageous to say like I don't know. because you just truly don't. But but my beliefs are also what I do believe is in the laws of what we know so far, and those all are scientific, and that's kind of how where my headspace is on it at this point. But
I definitely feel the same way. I feel like at the end of the day, and that's kind of been more so the topic to hammer home in this podcast, it seems like, because initially we were talking about the importance of podcasts and basically communicating information, but it always kind of points back, because now here we are in religion, and it always kind of points back to greater truths, right? And I guess the moment something clicked inside our brains to make us be self-aware, to make us be sentient, we've looked up and been like, well,
what the hell just did that?
Yeah, literally. And like, why are we here? And what does it really all mean? And even if the answer is no answer, that is still an answer. Even if the answer is there is no purpose, or it was completely happenstantial, people tend to use that to strip value from life, but that's a personal choice. At the end of the day, all we're searching for is an answer, and if that's it, then that's it. But I guess my point is, going back to the whole religion thing, is like, I just am very big on taking what we know at face value, and if you don't know it, just please be okay with saying you do not know. And that's
not a necessarily easy thing to accept, but it's something you might have trouble with day in and day out.
Exactly.
Even after accepting it, it's like, well, shit. Well, then what is the point? And it's like, well, the point is you have to make one.
And
that's a huge burden to have to carry. But I think that's the way the world works, and that's at least at this point, and like
it's a lot easier to lean on a religion or a dogma or an institution or a structure within yourself. And I was talking I was talking to you about this the other day. Like, I don't know if there's any validation in it, and I would love to do more research and to figure out, is there really a place inside the human psyche where we manifest the supernatural, more specifically where we manifest God?
Because, like brainwave wise, or like
and I honestly,
like chemically, is that what you mean?
Okay,
it's like a different part of the brain it's occurring in.
That's the thing. Is the answer is yes and no to all of those, and the reason why I say that is because we also don't know where our consciousness lies, right? And this is I'm gonna manufacture the rest of my little paragraph I'm gonna say here around the intention of a cliffhanger, because I would like our next conversation to involve not only what I'm about to mention, but free will and whether or not it's a real thing. And so, with that being said, what I'm gonna tie into here is the idea that what makes us could be many factors, or it could be few. And when I say few, I mean it could be, like, a naturalist perspective is simply that our body and our brain and the things therein and our environment are all responsible for this experience. There is nothing more, because there doesn't have to be anything more. And if that is indeed the case, actually, regardless of whether or not that's the case, I guess my point is these varying perspectives are all just trying to get to one thing, right? They're all just trying to get to what's the meaning of it all, and some people attribute that to a God. And when I say where are they putting that in their head, I mean, when we go through pain, when we go through hardship, when we go through grief, that is something that the I experiences, the self. But if, naturalistically speaking, purely scientifically speaking, there is nothing greater. There is just the self, but then they still have this ability to take something that is a very real mental experience, a very real emotionally damaging experience or positive experience, and to shut it off, or not shut it off, but just to place it,
experience it, and let it
and to place it somewhere else completely, and for it to not build. Because this is the thing, we all have a cauldron, metaphorically speaking, inside of us, like, and this is coming from a psychological perspective. That's why people like to vent, because the cauldron gets full, and they're like, I got a lot of stuff in here, let me tell you about it. It could be happy things, it could be sad things, but it gets full and you gotta vent. But the notion of a God and a higher spirituality allows mankind to take these things that would naturally fill this cauldron, and they just put it there. They put it on their God. I put it on God. My mom died, I put it on God. And that can look at that can look a lot of ways, like trust or this or that or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, that's where they put it. It's like, God understands. I don't understand.
Right.
God understands.
So you're asking, so the question is like, when that happens, what is actually happening in the brain? Where does it go?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like at that point, I feel like that's what the big desire or the motive is for that, is to push it into the, or to, not in the sense that you're burying it or not experiencing, but eventually to experience it and let it go to where it just falls into the unconscious, and then it's somewhere.
It just works out in there somewhere.
Exactly.
But that God figure though is this was and by no means do I want to sound condescending, but I just find it so very interesting, like that there is just and it's the fact that it's personified. So it's this personified entity that just lives literally in your mind, because there is no other reference except literature.
Well, that's where I think
abstractly.
Well, that's where I think it becomes unnecessary. I respect the process, and I think that's an activity of like humankind that it's an absolute must to have a coping mechanism like that.
Sure.
Mine has become meditation.
Sure.
And like any Christian, I'm still.
There's just prayer, meditation,
but I'm still trying. I'm working towards it, right? Like and it's everybody's experience is still going to be different in that. So am I meditating every day? No, but do I know deep in my heart that is like something that does allow me to put my my stresses on, or to let them go, I guess, because that's what it's about, is like experiencing it and letting it go, to where, because you'll go insane if you don't. It's like it just keeps it's what will cause racing thoughts and perpetual anxiety or depression, is that you hold on to these things that you can't like go through the grief and then like get through the grief.
Well, that's an interesting point to make, because then that takes it out of their head. That's so interesting, because then what that does is they're not putting this grief or this happiness or this pain on to a God somewhere in their head, but they're just using that God as a mechanism to be able to let that stuff go.
Exactly.
So in essence, it's still the same. It's still a stress relieving mechanism. It's still a coping mechanism.
But it's not deified or personified, and I think that's what's.
Well, it is in their case, but in meditation's case,
sense,
or in a less organized sense.
It's not the practice that I think is what's the issue. It's more so the personification of it, because it seems too simple for it to be. If this is all as weird as the Bible,
it's anthropocentric.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's the thing, is I don't, with the lack of knowledge of what a higher power or higher existence could look like, or just even this one, fully grasping just how abstract that this existence is and the universe itself. Like, I think that to personify it's too simple. So with something like meditation, there not being a deity, there's no longer that.
You aren't taking that mental step to have to add in faith or things unseen.
Exactly.
Or anything more than what's here, because meditation is simply coming to terms with what is here.
Exactly.
It's basking in the nothingness that needs to be within, while, you know what I mean?
And while it's not supernatural, it's like,
it can still be spiritual. It's internal. It's experienced within, and that gets back to what it really means to even be conscious or here, because at the end of the day, no one is behind your eyes but you. And even if that isn't truly a soul or some type of governing, like, man controlling the ship, that doesn't take away that your experiences are nobody else's but yours, and you are still a self.
There's still like a magical nature to it, just because it's
enigmatic, I think is a more appropriate, because magical again provides this extra layer of supernatural, which again
enigmatic. I'm trying to think of but I think what a lot of times gets bogged down in these conversations is they feel like an opposing view will struggle to accept that you're not willing to put it into like poetic or like or grandiose like words. So like I guess I say magical with like a
it's metaphorical. You're on the
for effect. Exactly. Like, do I believe in like just
actual magic?
Yeah, exactly. That no, but do I believe that there are things that don't of the world that are wildly coincidental and to a strange point, like to a strange degree? Absolutely, that shit happens every day.
Exactly.
In small ways and in huge ways, and it has been for all of history before even humans were here. But. So I think that I do consider myself someone who thinks of it in a very dreamlike or with a curious and like flabbergasted mind. That feels below it, you know, in a sense, but it's not to the sense where I just feel like it to where we need to make doctrines about it and say
exactly,
that and start saying that to where it doesn't need to be
that's where
a dogmatic experience.
Exactly, because that's where it creates an us and a them. And when there's an us and a them, because even if you as a person choose to say, well, like, I am all inclusive, at the end of the day, that doesn't necessarily take away where you align, you know what I mean? And so, like, you yourself can feel like Muslims, for instance, a lot of Muslims do not agree that you should just go around killing non-believers, right? Because they'll say, well, you know, there's a historical context where we can look at the Quran and say, well, at that time, our people were at war with other people who didn't want us to believe what we believe.
Right, so it was self-defense.
Exactly.
Which it still is in a large degree. I mean, it's a very not a ton has changed from then, other than that Christians have got more peaceful. And,
sure, but still though, in the Muslim faith, it's very similar to a lot of other monotheistic religions. There is still this idea that no matter how much love you're supposed to give another person, if they are not within the fold, they will not receive the same things that you will receive. You know, they will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. It says very clearly, do not be equally yoked. And even though a lot of modern Christians will still decide to marry whoever they love, truthfully speaking, that is not something that ought to happen. You need to marry Christians. And why is that? Because you need to be raising Christian children. Right. And why is that? Because you are not supposed to be unevenly yoked with non-believers. Why is that? Because of the influence then. You know, you are supposed to be meticulously deciding the aspects of your life so that they reflect Jesus. So that they reflect what the Bible wants in it. And so how would marrying someone, a non-believer, do that? How would becoming best friends even with a non-believer truly do that? That's why it says, do not forsake the fellowship of the brethren. So I know I'm dropping a lot of stuff here, but I guess my point is no matter how open-minded you are, the moment you affiliate with an organized religion, you cannot escape the us and the them. You know,
it creates it's inherent within the doctrine
exactly.
itself.
So you can choose to part ways from that, but at that point, and you said this before, why even hold on to the name?
Right. Yeah. Which that's really a lot of times where that's the point I get to with people that are like moderate, and it's usually where I think a lot of it has to do with it being hereditary, you know, it's like something
comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. It's like social. Even my parents, which is like they're as moderate as two Christians as I know, but they still feel the need to hold on to that name, and I personally don't. And I respect that they do, but it does make me wonder. It's like, if you've come this far, what is so scary about being just a spiritualist? Like that gives
not what you're used to.
Yeah, and I'm not used to it either. Jesus, I went to. I was a Catholic, of all things, I was a Catholic. It's about as guilty and serious as it gets, and God-fearing as it gets as a religion, and today, and in Christianity at least.
Yeah.
And it was a long, slow-burning process for me to let go, but there was always something. I never, after I started to have the freedom, I thank my parents greatly for giving me the opportunity to feel safe enough within my household, at least
to make the choice,
to think about it, to look into things, and like have free access to stuff. And that's the only way you're ever going to be, is if you can truly start thinking for yourself, rather than just saying because. And and I think they've done a lot of that too. I think a lot of Christians do, but it. I just got to the point where at first I let go of being Catholic, and I was still a Christian. I was like non-denominational in my head. I was just like, I believed in God, a general belief in God. But then I came to college and I took that religion course, and it shows you the history, and like it gives you in greater detail. Because when you're in the Christian faith, or in any faith for that matter, you're only getting that perspective and that side of the story. But when you we had a religious man teach a class. It was a Jewish rabbi that taught it,
which is so interesting.
Yeah, and he had very interesting perspectives on things, but he was still very obviously devout to Judaism, and
which is the part that I found so interesting. And a lot of the stuff in his class was what gave me like an understanding on how secular and how historically how secularly and how by man woven the whole kind of doctrine is, and like he will attest to that. But they just have this belief and faith that something's got to be greater. This makes sense. this is where I am.
Which
no matter what type of evidence stacks against them, the faith allows that to all mean nothing.
Yeah, and I think you can. I like to think of being. I think it's still faith is a word that I don't necessarily hold on to anymore or see a lot of value in as much as I do hope. Because hope still feels like of the world and still admitting. It's saying that you do know what it's saying. It's admitting what you do know and what you don't. But
don't know.
Aiming and still having a prayer. Yeah, still praying that to some sort of greater, to the greatness, the omniscient universe itself that you're existing in. That is
the space outside our flask, you know. Again, going back to the self, and you know, it's just literally talking to everything that's beyond my eyes. Like I'm opening my eyes, and I'm like, oh, there's all this other stuff, and we learn that there's stars in the universe. I don't know anything about any of that, but whatever's going on, I hope this. You know what I mean? Like you said, and I like that.
Rather than
the word,
there's having believing something that
it's an assertion.
Yeah. That you have no evidence. It doesn't need evidence. You could do all the evidence we've had for any science at this point could be thrown out the window, and as long as you can still have that faith. And I feel like that's hope leans on that evidence based experience to be able to, because I mean you can be hopeful about things, but if you don't move. If you don't let the hope guide you as to what the better direction is to go, then you're not going to get the hope. All the hope is lost because you realize. Oh shit! I'm not doing what it actually took, or the world. I haven't made the moves, and the world hasn't given back to me what I was hoping would to be able to actualize the experience I'm looking for.
Emphasis would hope
exactly, but when it's a spiritual thing and there's no deity involved, I feel like that's when and I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing at that point. They're just still seeing it as that. I see it more as a blinding light of sorts, or like, something in between. You know, it's paradoxical in the universe itself. So, I don't think there's the closest I can conceive of what maybe a god looks like. It doesn't look like a white dude in my head anymore, like it did for so long. You know, it looks like something more abstract, something I can try and think about all night. Yeah, exactly. But it's something I truly just can't conceive, and that's where I realize I'm like, that makes way more sense. Why? And that's the point I get to. On top of what I was saying with that religion course, is how much it opened my eyes up to the historical, like how integrated all of these religions are into the influence of the progression of history, of human history. Was that it became totally unnecessary to me to try and identify. I was as Christian at that point. I was as much a Christian according to the Bible as I was a Muslim or a Jew, even though I was neither of those things, because I wasn't born in the Middle East, or I wasn't born in a family, and obviously there's more Muslims in the world than just the Middle East, but that's predominantly where they exist. And or I wasn't I don't have Jewish heritage that I know of. I haven't done the ancestry. That'd be crazy.
I'm 2% Jewish.
Yeah, you're a little bit of everything. You're truly like
I'm a mutt.
You honestly could be like the liberal messiah. Honestly, if they did.
The melting pot. The melting pot. He's Welsh. He's Scandinavian. He's Middle Eastern. He's Jewish.
It's crazy. That's so funny.
Yeah, but you know.
And you're a quarter white, right?
Yeah, well.
I guess that's where the Welsh and the Scandinavian, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, if you want to get technical, I'm actually only 44% white. 45% black. Wait. 55% black.
Okay.
45% white.
Okay.
Or we'll say other, because in that 45% is mostly white. However, there is 1% Middle Eastern and 2% Jewish, according to my Ancestry.com.
Right. Which I've heard those things can often be somewhat inaccurate, but I think they're pretty.
They're regions, exactly. So it's an estimate. So it's technically it's not. I'm not 2% Jewish. Technically, I'm between 0.5% and 2% Jewish. Right. And according to the Middle Eastern, I'm like 0.05% to 1% Middle Eastern. Gotcha. So it's an estimate.
Is there a one drop rule with Jews?
Bro, that if you want to get technical, yes.
And if there was another Holocaust, yes, they would probably see it that way.
Yeah. Well, biblically speaking as well, it's all about the bloodline. You have to belong to the house of David. So, I if you want to get technical, it's in my blood, so I belong to the house of David. But which is not even all the way true, because God can make his own rules. Which,
right, well, New Testament God, the New Covenant God.
Definitely. No, dude. Wait a minute.
Well, that was the belief, is you didn't have to be like a Christian. It could just be anybody that accepts Jesus into their heart.
Yes, well, that would then make you a Christian.
Right, a Christian.
But also the dude. This could go on, because this is the thing, is God makes his own rules so many times in the Bible. It's not even funny. One time in particular being, so we all know how. What's his name? He was swallowed by the whale. You know, swallowed by the fish, and it spit him out. Jonah.
Thanks.
And now, why did that happen? Because God wanted Jonah to prophesy. He was like, I ain't going there. I don't want to go there. So he was trying to leave. And God made a storm happen, and he fell over, and he was swallowed up. Mm-hmm. And then where did it spit him out? The same place he was supposed to go initially to prophesy. Mm-hmm. And that city is one of the cities who will be seen who will be seen as like one of the people of God, because they were able to repent. They actually did repent. Mm-hmm. And I don't have scripture to back it up because I don't remember it. So anybody listening, feel free to, I don't know, can they comment?
They haven't a lot yet, but
so anybody listening, feel free to comment and let me know which ones I'm talking about, or if you disagree. Mm-hmm. However, but yeah, there are scriptures that reaffirm the idea that they will also be with God at the end. Like they will make it, they will be with it. And then think about Abraham's faith, right? So Christianity kind of thinks about it like, well, if you have to believe in Jesus to go to heaven, right? Because I know we've been going on.
No, you keep going.
Yeah, but like a lot of Christians will think, well, if you have to believe in, because think about it, this is kind of a flaw. Mm-hmm. A lot of Christians, because you have to believe in Jesus to get to heaven. There was no Jesus when Abraham was around.
Well, right. So no, that's it's an interesting thing that I came to the conclusion of too. Is like everyone before Jesus then they just didn't. They're just gone.
So this is
their soul's just gone.
So what happens, right? What happens?
Just interject really quick. Sure. I was going to say that there's no conception of heaven or hell by that point either. But
exactly.
But for some, that's not even like a consensus for Jews. Like I always understood that Jews didn't believe in like a necessary like an afterlife, or at least in a dualism. Yeah, because the rabbi did himself.
Exactly.
Which is. Anyway, go ahead.
It does depend on who you ask, but so I guess my overall point though is like, there's no Jesus back then, and so what gives them salvation is their faith in the coming of the Messiah. Mm-hmm. And why does that give them that salvation? Because it's the trust in God, right? Because think about Abraham. He talked about putting faith in God, and every other person, like David, a man after God's own heart, did a lot of fucked up shit. This man killed somebody, cheated on his wife. Like, I don't even remember the full rap sheet.
Yeah.
But the story of that man's life is rather interesting, because it's him fucking up and being like, damn, God, I should have done that. Help me out. And then God helps him out a little bit, but then some shit happens, and then he's like, God, he's like, damn, I shouldn't have done that. God's like, all right, let me help you out a little bit. And it's a constant struggle. Mm-hmm. And that people take that and they show like, well, this proves like humanity, right? But it was still God's decision to look at all the things David did wrong. It'd still be like, you're still a man after my own heart, and your descendants are going to be a sacred house to me. Because at the end of the day, there was no Jesus. So if every man has sinned, and 1 ounce of sin is enough to send you to hell, and only Jesus can atone for that, what's the atonement? All the sacrifices that the Jews did back then, because they were killing, they were giving tithes, they were killing their calves, giving their shekels, the whole shebang in order to atone. There was a day of atonement once a year, that they would kill shit, give shit in order to give to God. Now tell me, where's the difference from pagans in that? Like,
well, that's a big irony too.
Yeah, it's ironic.
A lot of people don't see witchcraft as in paganism as like a stupid magical thing, even if they do believe in Christianity. It's just seems totally absurd. But there is some like similarities. The stigma is literally from, and even the stories of like seeing it as a horrific and like possessive like demonic thing is largely solely because of the influence that Christianity had on its existence. It was just another religion.
Exactly. When the Roman Empire decided to ass fuck Europe in entirety, it was like everything that's not Christian, we're
witchcraft.
Yeah, it's witchcraft,
yeah.
And that's why a lot of Christian demons are actually simply just pagan gods. And this could be a whole other podcast.
Like the way they're
literally
interesting. The imagery of them resembles
even if you study the etymology of where those names come from, any specific name drop, because think about it. For instance, like Baal is the god that the people like the Ur of the Chaldees, so where Abraham left before he was like decided to commune with the one true God. Everybody around him, they were all polytheistic, and they were just worshiping and the whole shebang.
Right.
And exactly. And so fast forward to Europe, a lot of different types of people still had their gods. So when Rome became Christian, what did that mean for all the territories of Rome? That the emperor felt like they all need to be Christian as well, and so all of their gods were basically categorized into demons. And so, like for instance, Dionysus, that's like wine and like fertility or some shit, I can't remember. Like stuff like that gets perverted within the guise of Christianity to be like, okay, the demon of lust. So he goes from the god of wine and sex to being the demon of lust. You see, and there's
at first it
happens a lot.
It's like different physical things that can be abused rather than like it becoming like some other like alternate deity.
Exactly.
But then they characterize it as that too.
Pagans do that to themselves. Because you get Jupiter and you get Zeus. Jupiter's the Roman interpretation. Zeus is the Greek interpretation. So I don't want to sound like I'm attacking Christianity, but all I'm saying is
not just Christianity.
Exactly, not just Christianity. But all I'm saying is we've been here a million times, giving personified names and deities to things. Like, why can't we just take what we know to be true, and then everything else that is speculative, call it that? If you believe that there is one true God, then sure, but you have to admit the speculativity, if that's a word, probably not. But I just feel like how is it not speculation? You know? But I would think, Joseph, Gregory Becker, the host of this podcast, I would love to hear more perspectives of people, because it's not that I'm closed-minded to the idea of why it might be important to include an extra figure, but I need to be convinced.
Exactly.
Because I'm admittedly, I've been convinced that it's not necessary. You know what I mean? But convince me otherwise. So you as the host of this, like, I would love to see more of, not necessarily debate, but more of
bringing on people,
exactly,
that have that perspective. No, totally, because that's the thing. It's interesting because a lot of atheists, I feel like, will get to the point where they're like, or people, or just anyone who just doesn't,
isn't
a faith, isn't like religious. That's probably a better way of putting it. It's like, okay, well, I'm not religious, so at this point I have no stake in the matter, so I'm not going to talk about it. But to me, it's like, I feel like there's even more stake in the matter now, and I feel even more drive to talk with people and to communicate. And I'm sure, I mean, I don't know, dude, my mind is, I know I told you about the podcast episode of Daryl Davis being on Joe Rogan's show, and he's the guy that's converted like a bunch of white supremacists and KKK members to leave their faith. That's so interesting. It's fucking wild. Well, that's the thing, is I think it's hard sometimes when you're so committed to it and you feel like you have had so many conversations with opposing views that you're just like, we're gonna have to agree to disagree. Sometimes people will change, sometimes people won't. But I think I'm pretty confident of how I feel in this. You feel like there's no point to keep talking about it, like there's nothing new, but there is always something new. That's the whole point here, is that everyone's experience of it is so different. They're going to have different ideas. So yeah, I'm totally open for that. I'm looking for, that was kind of, I mean, we did 3 film reviews. We've done a lot of episodes on art at this point, or philosophy, and this one is still kind of philosophical. I mean, religion's a pretty philosophical concept, and like, talking about it, even if it's not like included in a lot of times. I mean, every philosophy is secular.
That's pretty much the three things we've done.
Yeah, because we did the phenomenology as the first episode. Did second was on philosophy.
Even in just now in this.
Yeah, we still kept it that way. But I mean, it was kind of. I mean, we sprinkled in like it's funny because I'm sitting here trying to think of like what to even name this episode. Mm-hmm. But, which is, sometimes it's fun to combine things where it's like with the one with Sule, I combined like, we talked about art, but we also talked about the internet, and then like, at points we talked about art and then the internet. Yeah. Sometimes it was separate. Yeah. So that one was kind of a cool moment where I'm like, this will stand out to people because it's like, art and the internet, what do those two things have to do with each other? Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I think religion was the direction we took because we were kind of already thinking about, I mean, we've been talking about that the last few days. Once again, which we've had tons of conversations on it anyway, but I think coming in here we were thinking about that. Then at the beginning of the podcast we were like, well, let's talk about like what does it mean to podcast, why is it important, which I think is like there's kind of a combination of dualism of the episode here too, that seems, even though religion was the direction we went for it was still like still rooted in this idea of like all of that applies to, it could have been anything. It could have been any other topic you want to talk about, whether it was political
it's so applicable.
Because it was about truth. That's what we were trying to get to.
And which is what we were saying was the
value of
podcasting. Is like by collectively giving all of these perspectives and experiences. It's all just, there's no way you can't inch closer to a truth when you're laying out so many possibilities on the table. It gives you the added advantage of being like, that doesn't make sense. This has evidence. This is viable evidence here that could correspond to this. Like,
and that's what keeps us thinking, because if you don't have these conversations, you become complacent, and you just start to think like, okay, I know everything I'm going to know. And that sounds.
Echo chambers begin to form.
Yeah, and that's terrifying. Not even just because, I mean, there's a comfort in it and like having a bunch of yes men around you, so I get the appeal in that. But when you're alone, if all you have is a bunch of yes men and you feel like there's nothing to question anymore, then you're gonna really start spinning out and being like, well, I know everything about about myself and what I feel and what I think, and like I don't really why talk to anybody anymore at that point. But
just gotta keep thinking. You gotta keep talking.
You gotta keep thinking. You gotta keep talking to each other. But, man. Interesting. Well, we never got to the psychologist that you were wanting to talk about and whether I agree with his views or not. But I mean, we kind of touched on Peter Atkins anyway, so I'm sure, depending how devout of an atheist he is, I probably would find some nuances where I disagree with him, or at least his approach. Compared, I mean, if I could with Peter Atkins, but
sure, many other times.
Of course. I mean, seriously, now I think it'll be easier to do more episodes with everybody, with just people in general. Now that I've got the setup, which is another result of the ever-changing podcast itself. But
it's an upgrade, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so too. We got Grayson over there shooting for us too.
What's up, Grayson?
Yes, sir.
So he's the Jamie now. He even helped. He even gave us Jonah. He filled us in with it.
I was like, I couldn't remember the name.
Jamie.
Hey, you can talk to me next, man. I believe in God.
He's a perfect candidate. We had that conversation.
I know we did. We filmed some of it.
So I would love to, especially.
I'll splice some of those clips into the podcast.
But yeah, definitely. I think that would be cool to. I want to get people on here that it's comfortable to agree with people, like I'm saying. But I think this is a good avenue to launch me into that chapter of like maybe trying to seek out. Like, I would love to have. There's something I was thinking the other day, and I can't remember what it was. It was something to do with like having a more conservative person come on to talk about something. I think it was like poverty or something. Oh, that's what I want to do. I want to have somebody watch American Factory, the Julia Reichert and Steve Bognar doc that just won the Oscar.
Big ups to Wright State.
Yeah, big ups. I feel so bad, dude. I didn't get to see them when they came here. I didn't have time that day, but they came and visited, which is awesome. It's so cool that they really, they're not people that, they're not famous people that say things that they don't mean, like they seem, I mean, I don't know them that way, but they seem to stick to their word, especially, I mean, they talk about how much they love Dayton, they make films in Dayton, and then they come back to Dayton, like, that's so cool.
And so they fucking won an Oscar for it.
Yeah, dude,
it's so cool.
It's great. It's so awesome.
It's a proud thing.
Yeah. But I would love to talk to someone conservative, because I feel like it's impossible to watch that movie and to still have a conservative view on the economy of China and the U.S. and the relationship they have because of what these people are experiencing in it. So I think maybe that could help maybe move someone the other direction. But that would be great. I think that would be a good one to like subjects like that, like looking for people that I know probably aren't going to agree with me, so that we can find more like a more common ground on it, or inform each other of maybe things we didn't know. But yeah, dude, hell yeah, lots of things to come. I'm just excited for this space, dude. Yeah, literally anytime. I feel like we should just get in the habit of, if we're going to be hanging out talking, might as well come here. It's cozy. And for what we do pretty much anyway. I feel like we're always kind of...
We'll probably get something out of it, something nice out of it.
Yeah, for sure, and hopefully...
Nice sound bites or information.
Yeah, hopefully they're nice. Hopefully someone doesn't, like, rearrange it, like...
Right, like, you said you love abortion and you hate black people!
Yeah, dude, someone's gonna reframe, like, me saying something about, another Holocaust, or, like, you and your one-drop Jew.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a bigot in a week.
Well, you know, Joey Becker's not a bigot.
Really?
Well... Okay,
yes, man. That's subjective. You're a Nazi for saying that, Monty.
Well, to my blood, so I can be whatever I want.
Oh, God.
I'm a hodgepodge of contradiction.
Yes. I think this image of you up here is about to get even more special, too, because final note, when we wrap this up, I know you gotta get going, my bad, is that I think I'm gonna stop doing a logo for every guest, because if I want to do these like a couple times a week or do more of them, there's just no way I can get James to draw them up that quickly.
That's true.
And I don't have the money for that either, because
I mean,
I
it's possible only the regulars.
That's exactly. You just took
sorry.
it out of my mouth. No, thank you. that's what Louis did last night too. He was like, "Well, wait a minute, you just do that," and I was like, "That's exactly what I was thinking."
Yeah.
Just people that are going to be regulars, and whether he was saying too, like maybe yours could be for psychology and have some sort of redesign of the logo to where that represents that. I mean, his kind of already have been putting like the little film things on there, like little gifs.
Yeah.
But I think we can still keep that open ended, and I probably will just.
Where are the interns?
Yeah, exactly. We don't have the budget for that.
Free paid interns, come on.
Honestly, yeah.
Get some freshmen. Get some film freshmen. Tell them that this is for you.
This is an internship. You could probably list it, even if it's not an actual business. You'd still say it's a.
And they would get actual experience, like just throwing it out there, Use the people value. It's kind of what they're there for.
I don't know what I need them for at this point. We're recording. We got the logos.
Their job would be to make sure my beautiful face is on.
Yeah, someone can just like lay under the chair here and like just keep moving the mouse to make sure your face stays up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's gonna be a thing of regulars, and from now on, I'll just have people send me a selfie making the face, and then like post that on Instagram when there's a new episode. That way, I keep pumping them out, because there's a lot of people that say they want to be on it.
Yeah, a lot of people are jealous.
Yeah?
Jealous of me.
Yeah,
jealous of Louis.
Yeah, they're
jealous of
getting on here
had the platform
twice before they've even been on once.
Exactly.
It's because you're superior beings.
Well, I won't name drop because we're on air, but I'll let you know afterward who they are, but they want to be on it.
They want to be on?
They want to be on it.
Okay, well. I don't know them. I don't let strangers on here.
No, you know.
I do know?
Well.
Okay. A little too well.
One of them. Okay. Anyway, no gossip on the podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's not what we were doing. That's not what this is.
No. On that note.
Yes. Send me your song. Whatever song, the one you made with Kilo, because it's got to be on.
Yeah,
it's going to start now. I'm fading it in right now, so hurry up.
The Agenda, guys. Check it out.
That's the name of the song? Oh, nice. Yeah. Check it out right now, because it's playing. We already started the fade in.
You can't even hear us right now.
Yeah.
The episode's over.
Oh my god. Oh god. That's the Muslim in him speaking. And you don't even have to soundbite that one. I'm canceled.
Alright.
I canceled myself.
I ain't never give a fuck like this. If you felt something, would you want my kiss? I won't let you know about the life I live, but I ain't got a choice, I'm stuck like this. Y'all on the left if you got thick skin. I ain't never like boys, I like real. Bitch, I got dick for days. Chip on my shoulder, I drippin'. Go back to different days. Forrest Gump, niggas stuck in their ways.